university president, provost, sociologist, humanities scholar in residence, mentor, role model, and more. In over half a century, Dr. J. Herman Blake has established and maintained the high academic and professional standards that have earned the respect and admiration of colleagues, students, administrators, community organizations, funding institutions, and individuals representing all strata of society. Behind every person who's great, we all know that there are those who influenced them, who inspired them, who held their hands along the way. And I'd like to take a moment for you to reflect on those in your early days who contributed to your beginning, your aspirations, your dreams.
I'd have to say two key people, two key women.
Okay.
Three women.
Okay.
My mother, Lilas Blake, born Lilas Michael. My grandmother, Margaret Michael. And the woman who took me in as a young child into her family, Charlotte Wilson. All three of them had a lot to do with shaping me. Well, your mother creates you, not only physically, but intellectually or mentally. And I knew that as long as I could make my mother happy, I would be happy. And making my mother happy meant getting good grades. Making my mother happy meant not being a problem in school. Making my mother happy meant not hanging out on the street corners with young men who were on their way to jail. But she had all the children, and she was always taking somebody else in. We didn't know when somebody would be in a bed in our house and at the table, yes. But she just took them in. We didn't have enough, but we shared what we had. I got that word as a warrior, thinking of women as warriors, from attending services at Moving Star Hall on Johns Island. There was no regular service at any time. There was no minister or anything, but the men sat up front and the women led out. But the women addressed each other as warriors. And so when those women would get up and testify about being warriors and what they had to go through as a warrior, I knew that was my mama. And so my mama became a warrior. People don't understand in any way, in my opinion, the extraordinary depth of Gullah culture. That depth and those roots that reach all the way back into Mother Africa. And for me, it means you are being constantly inundated, rebaptized with the spirits of what I call the gone. So I talk about the born, gone, and unborn. I think in terms of all of this, and it energizes me to do anything and everything I have to do. In spite of being partially paralyzed from a stroke, my mother could come to my graduation from New York University. And that was a grand day for me and for her, because I had graduated. And what was so grand about it was the faculty. As I wheeled her around after the ceremony, the faculty treated her like she was a queen. And she was.
I read your writing on that.
And somehow or other that bonded me around the idea of education, excellence, and,
yes.
and achievement.
Yes.
She had indeed had a stroke. Paralyzed on the right side, never could write again. She had a beautiful handwriting. And then at 54, she died. And that's too young to die. She died before my grandmother. And when we lowered...
Her spirit still remains through you.
When we lowered her in the grave, I said, I would do everything I could, everything, to make sure another woman, black, white, or whatever color, didn't have to suffer indignities and poverty because some person didn't treat her with respect.
After completing his undergraduate work at New York University and earning both master's and doctoral degrees at the University of California, Berkeley, J. Herman Blake joined the faculty at UC's newly opened campus in Santa Cruz in 1966. He was the first African American to join UCSC's internationally renowned faculty.
Here I come with all of these qualities, graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, okay? And the faculty at the University of California, Berkeley, respected all around the world. Now I got a chance to build a career in any research university I want. When Santa Cruz called me and asked me to come to Santa Cruz because they were building undergraduate institution with an emphasis on teaching that exceeded the traditional emphasis on teaching of the University of California, I went because I knew I wanted to be in some way a resource for undergraduates. I didn't want to go someplace where I was doing research and I had a bunch of graduate students who'd already been through the process. I wanted those who hadn't started.
An early success at UCSC was partnering with Cowell College's founding provost, Paige Smith, to establish the Cowell Extramural Program. It created rich educational experiences for students and provided much-needed services to low-income communities around the country. Dalfusky Island, South Carolina, and other Sea Island communities were a point of special focus.
I was there in 1967 to 71, and I participated in Dr. Blake's extramural program in the spring of 1970. Wow. That was a very significant time period, of course, because that was the very height of the anti-Vietnam War protests. Oh, yes. There was the whole Cambodia issue, Kent State happened during that period. And I was in Beaufort in having a actually very cross-cultural experience for me. I grew up in Southern California at the beach, went to UC Santa Cruz. This was my first time to the South. It was my first time being part of a black community, and it was my first exposure to the uniformed military. Wow. And it was, as I said, quite a cross-cultural experience.
First of all, it was wonderful, because you see, it wasn't simply the students you were teaching. A number of those students from high-income families, extremely high. If I were to tell you the names of people I became involved with in terms of their families, politically and financially, as families, it would blow your mind, because we were matching Stanford in recruiting those students. It would blow your mind. The other side of it, as I met their families, I realized their families wanted me to succeed as an academic with principles and morals and commitment. They were sending their children to Santa Cruz because they wanted them to have some of these kinds of experiences. But at the same time, I found that they were supportive of the work I was trying to do outside of the university and with others in the community. I found that there were people who were committed to and interested in what I was interested in, who didn't know how to get to the places where I got to. And as I got to those places in the African American community, they would give me support. When I was able to recruit 3 students from Dalfusky, I had a gentleman who paid every dime.
During this period, Dr. Blake worked tirelessly with a variety of community organizations throughout the country and co-authored the book Revolutionary Suicide with Huey P. Newton, co-founder of the Black Panther Party. Newton would later enroll at UCSC, where he received both bachelor and doctoral degrees.
I was there from 1968 to 71, and Santa Cruz was only a few years old at that time. Professor Blake was such a powerful teacher to begin with, so we were drawn to his courses, and it was really an eye-opener for all of us. And more important, I think, for what it taught us about ourselves, because one of the really unique things about Professor Blake's teaching was that he not only taught us about the general history and sociology of America, but he urged us to kind of make it personal by going back into our own stories. Herman's course changed our lives. He didn't just teach us a set body of information, but he taught us things that made us rethink who we were, and then shape, in many ways, what we became in the years and decades to come. And then also an abiding faith in the ability and the capability of ordinary students. Herman never gave up on anybody, and those of us who know, we know people who had problems, with the law, problems with the academics, problems with their personal lives, and for various reasons their very academic success and maybe their very lives were in question. And many a professor would say, that's not my concern, or this person is failing, or he's not bright, or she's not bright. And I encounter that all the time at Stanford. They say, well, so-and-so, we just got to let them go. And I think it's partly through the example of Herman, I almost invariably say no. I think about him in this kind of phrase, I guess it's from a biblical verse or a song, let not this sparrow fall. And another song, of course, his eye is on the sparrow, which he used to play in his class. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watcheth me. So I always had the sense with Herman that he was looking out for you, and he would rescue people from situations where, without his intervention, they would have almost certainly failed. And I may not always do it as well as he did it, but I try to do it as much as I can. And every time I see one of these sparrows with a broken wing kind of begin to take flight, I realize that that's Herman's influence. And I think a lot of people at Santa Cruz benefited from his help in those ways.
In 1972, J. Herman Blake accepted an appointment as the founding provost of Oaks College, the 7th residential college at UC Santa Cruz. Oaks College is a multicultural community committed to equality and freedom from oppression. How did that offer come from the late Dean McHenry, former chancellor?
McHenry held to the principles of academic freedom after Martin was assassinated. Colleges and universities around the country were trying to figure out what can we do more. That's when they really began to recruit African American students. And the plan was for the 7th college that was going to open at Santa Cruz was going to be a college that focused on the urban experience. Yes. And Dean McHenry, I have to be honest with you, he made the way smooth. And Dean McHenry's position was, I give him credit for this, you must be given maximum opportunity to either succeed or fail. But if you fail, it isn't because you didn't have the support.
I was already here as a faculty member. I had just been hired, but I didn't have a college affiliation. So I arranged to meet with Herman Blake and Ralph Guzman, who was at the time the co-founding provost at Oaks College, to talk about the possibility of my joining the college. And so I went in to meet with him. I had no idea what it was going to be like. Herman, of course, came in with his black leather jacket that he always wore. Ralph, I think, was wearing a jacket and tie, and I was probably wearing shorts. So we were quite an interesting threesome. But it was an interesting experience for me because it was clear that Herman and Ralph had thought carefully about what they wanted to do. I was excited by their vision of Oaks College. I was excited by the multiculturalism of it, and I was excited about its relationship to the sciences and the desire to incorporate sciences within the college as well. Oaks College in its earliest days, when people first started thinking about it, they thought, well, maybe that's the ethnic studies college. Herman didn't think about it as ethnic studies. He thought about it as multiculturalism, as bringing people from many cultures into the mainstream of the university.
He taught astronomy. He taught introduction to astronomy. We teaching the sciences. They had to go. And George was very sensitive. And we talk about this at retreats and things. He noted that his students just didn't seem to get it. And our position was, if the students aren't getting it, what's wrong with us? Not with them. And as I recall, he said he'd open up by talking about Greek and Roman systems of belief about the elements. Well, then he started studying Aztec and African. And so he'd open up with all of these cosmologies. And it was his way of saying, you're welcome. It wasn't pandering to the black community, the Latino community, but when he talked about Roman cosmology or Greek cosmology, he could talk about Aztec cosmology and African cosmology.
I was honored and privileged to be invited by Herman to come here from San Francisco State right after the Black student movement at San Francisco State, where the students demanded that the curriculum be changed, and where many of us went out on strike in support of the students. And Herman came to speak at the campus and offered me an opportunity to come here and try to find solutions to some of these problems. I was able to help create and build a new college, work with students in a new way, and teach courses that I felt were more relevant to our society. I couldn't have done that in the same way at San Francisco State.
When I came to Santa Cruz, going to the program in South Carolina was a priority. It was something I really wanted to do. It was something I knew about before I came. I just got on the under the umbrella that Herman was for all of us, and just hooked onto the hook and just sailed along. And he was a mentor, a friend. Sometimes he had to talk frank to me and say, keep on moving, and put one foot in front of the other, and don't give up on your dreams, etc., and study harder. So over the years, it has evolved into including my thoughts and musings about a lot of things, and helping me pass on the richness to my daughter, who is now 17, and having him give me some perspective on that, and helping me usher her into academia, all of that. So it's been just a great mentorship, great friendship, and I'm really glad to still have it be going on.
Following 18 years at UCSC, Dr. Blake left California in 1984 to become president of Tougaloo College in Mississippi, a private, historically black, liberal arts institution. J. Herman Blake's journey has also included tenures at Iowa State University, Indiana University, Purdue University, Swarthmore College, and the Sea Island Institute at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. In 2008, J. Herman Blake became the Humanities Scholar in Residence at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. This tailored position offers a unique forum for his many talents and areas of expertise. It has returned him to a part of the country in which he has deep academic and family roots.
And we have had a long 40-year relationship. And over the past 12 years or so, he has been associated here as the Humanities Scholar in Residence at the Medical University, which has afforded us an opportunity to talk and to plan and to do things jointly in ways that really are an extension of what we did at UC Santa Cruz. I think Herman, as he always has, brings a sense of community.
Yes.
Real service orientation
Yes.
about the importance of the campus community, linking with the surrounding community in ways that are responsive to the needs and sensitivities of the communities that may not always parallel the sort of corporate or academic or the environment that is we are accustomed to in terms of living in the academy. But being respectful of folk regardless of where they are located economically, racially, sexual orientation, you name it. He has brought that sensitivity to the discussion here in ways that we heretofore were sort of stumbling around. We had some awareness, but I think the real respect notion, the idea of meeting folk where they are rather than expecting people to always have to come to us. I think Herman's sense of passion, his responsibility to scholarship, his devotion to service, his humane consciousness are all parts of what I think are the great values that he's passed on. I love the brother. I will always love this brother.
When Herman came to the medical university, when the then provost, John Raymond, brought him in, I'm not sure that they knew exactly what they wanted, but they knew that Herman had a variety of skills and an ability to bring people together. He had the ability to communicate, the ability to listen, and certainly the ability to learn. All saw him in one particular area. They saw him in sociology, or they may have seen him in other student affairs or student issues, all of these different issues. But what Herman does is he brings all of those qualities together, and they have really come together here at Medical University of South Carolina because he's able to interact with so many different groups. And he's able to learn about the content area so that he can understand the terminology as well as listen and communicate with them. So that's what and I think that's what Dr. Raymond had in mind, but I don't think that he could see that whole picture.
Herman is a connector.
Yes,
he sees the linkages between things that are not obvious to other people, and I think that's the insights that he brings in helping us think a little bit more holistically is really an amazing contribution. Of course, Herman is so broadly read. He knows so much about so many different topics.
Yes, he does.
And of course, the behavioral science element of his background, as you say, as a sociologist, he understands human interaction in a way that I think those of us who haven't studied it as much as he have probably can only be jealous of.
Exactly.
And I think he moves very facilely between groups. I think he's a great mentor. I mean, he's certainly a great mentor to faculty, but also to students. I think they see in him again, to go back to the wisdom, so much that they can learn from his life experience. And my sense is that he's really valued by them, not just from what he can teach in a formal classroom setting, but really more as a life counselor. Herman has been very involved in a number of issues, helping us think about diversity issues on campus, different cultural issues that different people bring to the campus. And I think he's really impacted my own thinking considerably in that regard, how we draw the great strengths from as a diverse population, whether it's faculty or students or staff. How we relate to the community.
Yes.
This is something that is very important to any healthcare organization. How do you maximize your opportunities to interact effectively with the community? And of course, Herman is a world's expert on that. So he really brings a kind of understanding that even with all my academic preparation in public health, I didn't really have. And I think that's something that I feel Herman really personally contributed to my own appreciation of how we engage the community.
And I'd like to name 10 people. And I'd like to ask you to use one word, and I know you're a storyteller, but one adjective to describe each of those people. So the first one is George Washington Carver, one adjective.
Hope.
Alex Haley.
Persistence.
Malcolm X.
Vision.
Huey P. Newton.
Determination.
Septima Clark.
You do it to me. Love.
Josie King. People are going to have to look up these people.
Josie King. Belief, belief, belief.
Elder Thaddeus Wilson.
Oh my God. Joy.
Mrs. Maggie Randolph.
Discipline.
And we're going to end with Mrs. Lilas Blake, your mother.
Oh. Character.
Thank you, Herman. I love you.
Thank you.